extremely fun. It's Sunrise with Craig Fronin right here on KCMX AM 880. Lively conversations around news, politics, and people, plus local news and weather every 30 minutes. We want to hear from you. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, or go to kcmxam.com. Join in the conversation by calling 541-772-8255. Sunrise, where it matters what you think.
Good morning, everybody. 7 minutes after the hour. Welcome to the Sunrise Show here on KCMX News Talk 880, our world headquarters. Glad you're tuning in. You're going to get a real treat. I'm thrilled to welcome on the phone our show this morning, Zach Fortier, and he's a retired LAPD for 30 years. He did everything: K-9, SWAT, gang, and domestic violence, and sex crimes as an investigator. He has since retired and written books. And his books, of course, he's got Curb Check was his first book, and a case-by-case account, Street Creds, the second book, and of course, as Zach was in a gang task force, and then the third book, Curb Check Reload, and I've got that book, and it is unbelievable. And Zach, thanks so much for being on the program. How's it going today?
Well, it's going good, and thanks for having me, Craig.
You bet, you bet. Well, asking a law enforcement officer after he's retired and doesn't have to suit up, doesn't have a gun belt, doesn't have to put on a bulletproof vest, any day walking up and perpendicular is good, huh?
Pretty much, yeah.
Pretty much.
Nice.
I mean, it quite frankly, LAPD, I mean, there'd be a lot of, going back to when you first started, as a cadet and getting in there and having your eyes opened, up until now. And I just went to Los Angeles, grad week. My daughter's down at a performing arts school down there. And so I was down there, and, I've been down there on occasion, and it can be eye-opening, to say the least. And
yeah,
I guess, bring us in the beginning. Let me just clear up
one thing for you first. I was not with LAPD. I was on the West Coast, but not LAPD.
Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry. Okay.
No problem.
All right, good deal. Well,
that's a whole other, that's a war zone there, man.
Okay, gotcha. So at this point, your police force, did you keep that behind the scenes about which force you were with? Is that kind of what we...
Right,
okay,
right.
Okay, all right, gotcha. Now I'm keyed in. Sorry about that. So when you started as a cadet, you had to just learn the ropes from scratch, right? I mean, you kind of...
Yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, anybody who's been out will tell you, the police academy just gives you a reference point, and once you get out, that's where the real training begins and where the real reality check is.
Yeah, I mean, it's the next thing is you're dealing with people, you're dealing with humanity, you're dealing with, and I talked about this earlier on the show. I wonder, part of that humanity, do they, are they, negligent? Are they, indignant, or is it just, taking advantage, or is it just pure evil at some point? I guess you see it all, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
And then, of course, go ahead.
Go ahead. I think the best thing, for people to realize, I know, as I was around a while and started to train new guys, it wasn't that, everybody's bad that you run into. It's that you're running into people at the worst time of their life, and maybe the single worst 2 hours of their life.
Exactly.
And they're not coping well. Things have gone wrong.
Yeah, I mean...
You're not seeing them at their best. You're seeing them at their worst.
Well, exactly right. And this is the next thing. And the drugs. I mean, the drugs and the alcohol, everybody's in altered states. And that's why they call the police, because of the altered states. And interesting, Tony Robbins talks about moving away from pain. Humans, they either go toward the pain or then they go away from the pain. And humans are fragile. I think you would probably tend to agree with that. And people are looking for some relief, and that's where they get into any type of vice to help them with that.
Story.
Go ahead, Zach, because the stories in this book are unbelievable.
I very much agree. I think, everybody's trying to just trying to cope with day to day, and depending on, what coping skills you have and how you employ them, kind of depends on how successful you're going to be and how well you're going to deal with the stuff that everybody deals with.
Yeah, the next thing is, of course, law enforcement. They do suffer from, stress.
Big time.
All of it. I mean, the PTSD you even indicated, and the calls that you've been on scene. You've had dead bodies, right? You've had mangled, just all types of, whether it's auto accidents, gun related stabbings, any number of things, and you end up with death. This is a very gruesome and real part of life, and of course here you are on the front lines securing the scene for EMT and fire, and you're dealing with first type stuff. So obviously you would have post-traumatic stress, things like that. And how do you cope? Do they have counselors for that in law enforcement? I guess they do.
Yeah, they do. And, I really thought I was coping well. I mean, I work out a lot. I didn't drink. I didn't do anything. I didn't smoke. I was pretty clean cut as far as lifestyle. But it all caught up to me. I mean, it caught up to me in a big way. It basically incapacitated me when it really did hit.
Wow. And
I don't know that therapy or counseling helped. For me, I just had to completely remove myself from the environment I was in.
Interesting. Yeah, because here you are, you're a sworn police officer, you've got a gun belt, you're in charge of that weapon, and you've got to keep yourself safe and your fellow officers safe, and then the public around you. And if you're not able to make those split-second decisions, I mean, I learned from the Citizens Academy that I went to locally here that, law enforcement, they get a split second to make a decision, and then for years after, everyone gets to critique of that split second.
Right, exactly.
So when did you decide? I mean, how did you decide that, man, I'm not doing very well, I got to get out of this?
It really kind of hit me, and it was on. I remember one particular call. I was fine the call before, and this wasn't like a really stressful call or anything. I was just listening to this guy,
right,
as he explained what had happened, and my brain suddenly just quit processing. Like everything he said, I understood it was English, but it made no sense. I had him repeat it to me. It made no sense. I'm like, what is going on? So I called another unit over. I said, I don't know what's wrong. I can't make sense out of this. Does he make sense to you? And they listened and looked at me like I was crazy. I'm like, something's wrong.
Wow.
But it all hit me at once. I couldn't read. I couldn't process cognitively.
Wow. And now, how many?
Hammered, just like out of nowhere.
Yeah, and so was this at the culmination? I mean, what number year of service was this for you?
I was at about my 14th or 15th year.
14th or 15th year, and so you were still doing a traffic, street cop stuff, or were you?
Yeah. I pretty much kept it quiet. That I was, obviously damaged, and I tried to figure out what was wrong because, we didn't have any type of disability in the department I worked in. If you couldn't do it, you're just out the door.
Yeah, right. I mean, and then so you at that point obviously adjusted, but you also got into K-9 and SWAT, and so then as an investigator. So did you get into the detective work?
No, I had already been through the gang unit. I'd already done K-9. After that, I tried to get off the street. I went into schools and tried to be in an environment that was not as, I guess, threatening.
Right. Gotcha. Okay, because you talk about, and you talk about your books about getting from off the street into administration and things like that, but you probably didn't want to do that, right?
No, that never appealed to me. I really had a lot of issues with guys that went into admin. They seemed to, I don't know, have chips on their shoulders. They were trying to prove that they were still on the street, even though they weren't,
Yeah, exactly. Ladies and gentlemen, we've got Zach Fortier with us. He's a retired police officer, 30 years in law enforcement, and I mistakenly brought in the LAPD, and I apologize, that's not correct. He purposely has kept the law enforcement office discreet, so his books are written and don't have to deal with the identifying on the law enforcement office. And Zach, I apologize, and so I I agree with what you're doing just to keep law enforcement safe and don't bring down on them what you're doing, right?
Right.
Exactly. All right, well, let's take a quick little break. More on the Sunrise Show. This is just fascinating because it almost, in fact, it very easily could equate to having tour of duty in wars around the world. And it was a war on the streets of America, and Zach Fortier was doing it 30 years. And we'll be talking to him right after this break. Stay tuned. Stay with us.
Sunrise will return in a moment on KCMX News Talk 880. A little bold and extremely fun, Monday through Friday, 6 to 9 a.m. on KCMX AM 880. Lively conversations around news, politics, and people, plus local news and weather every 30 minutes.
Okay.
Here's Craig.
Good morning, everybody. 20 minutes after the hour. Glad you are with us this morning. Riveting interview with Zach Fortier, and he's a retired police officer, 30 years on the force. And, of course, we left the township out to change the names to protect the innocent. How about that? But, Zach, you know, this, and you've written these books, and the book I've got, Curb Check Reload, is the third book. You've got a fourth out, and then the latest book, the fifth book, is going to be about the founder of the Crips gang, and that hasn't been released yet. Of course, you can find his books on Amazon or get to his website, ZachFortier.com. And wow, Zach, you know, I feel like I should say thank you for your service. You know, it feels it feels that way. You know, trying to work hard as a police officer, keeping the streets safe and arresting people and all the stuff that you've seen. I don't even know where to start on these stories. They're just, they're all over the board, and a lot of them have graphic detail and language and all that kind of stuff, and it's because it is what it is, right?
Right. That was the point. When I wrote them, I never read, or even, you know, there's movies that come close, but it's close, it's not right on. And there really wasn't any books out there that really got to the nitty-gritty of what it was like. You know, they were either the cops were heroes and, you know, supermen that defied all odds, or, you know, they were just so broken they couldn't have accomplished anything. And it's really more of a down the middle there.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, just, you know, the stories are unbelievable. And, of course, the one was interesting is the guy that's beaten on the girlfriend. And when you finally get in there, they take the call, and you show up, and the family's there, and he tries to squeeze out the bathroom. He goes in the window when you're talking. And what is it? The tattoo on the back says, low down snake, what?
Cold-hearted snake.
Cold-hearted snake.
I guess it was a song by Paula Abdul, I found out later.
Yeah, but
he had that tattoo on him.
Yeah, but it was on the base of his neck, right? So when you went to, here he was trying to skate out of this 1x1 or 2x2 window, and it's like, dude, that guy's never going to. And he didn't have his shirt on, and it said cold-hearted snake on the back. He'd been beaten up on this girl, and the family comes over and tries to help him, and they're sitting there all glum, like they're not going to do anything or say anything. And then he throws down and says, hey, you guys want to kill a cop? I'll give you $1,000 if you kill this guy right now.
Yeah, it was pretty tense.
And the guy comes at you like, well, let me check this out. And didn't you at some point have your gun out at that point, say, you want to mess with me, really?
Yeah, it was a kid I knew. He was like 18, 19 years old, and I knew his family, and the whole premise was they could get away with it because if they didn't know me, you know, and somehow I lived, I wouldn't know who they were.
Exactly.
And it was just like, you really want to test me. You know who I am. You know I'm damaged beyond belief. I mean, word was out. I was kind of messed up. It's like, you really want to do this, man? I got no problem. I'll kill you right here.
Yeah, and here was the thing. You had gone in without backup at the time, so you knew, and he turned around and left. He gave you a funny look, and he turned around and left. And in the book you said, when he left so quickly, you knew it wasn't good. And so at that point, you were in for a firefight.
Yeah, I knew I had a very limited time. He was going to get a weapon and going to get more people. Yeah, because the look on his face was, we can do this.
Yeah, and you were
We can kill this
fighting.
dude.
You were fighting to get this guy out of the bathroom, and he was fighting with you, cussing, just arms and legs flurrying all around. So meanwhile, you're fighting this guy and dealing with someone else that's going to come back and try to off you, or whether it was a baseball bat or who knows what. But you were all by yourself, and so at this point, amazing stories. And I just, like I said, thankful that you're alive and you can live to tell about it. But once again, I go back into that issue of no respect. How do these people get this way? Why are they this way?
You know what? I don't think it's a lack of respect. I think it's just a different kind of respect. It's like, in this particular instance, this guy came back in. He had a knife, and I had already subdued the guy I was there to arrest. And, I drew my weapon on him, like, you really want to do this? And that's what he respects, is, are you willing to back yourself up? Then that's when he backed down. That's when he dropped the knife and said, we're cool, forget it. I'm not doing this. That's the kind of respect that's on the streets. It's not the same kind of respect that mom and pop going to church on Sunday have. It's a different world. You have to realize it's a different world. It's a different value system.
Exactly. One of the things, Zach, that has interested me, and of course, the gun control rights and gun rights, and you've been in this so many years, and I don't want to get off kilter here, but Sandy Hook, the shootings out in Connecticut, and they attacked this psychotropic drug. He'd been off of them, whatever. He was mental. We know that these young people that are off these drugs, they have this problem. They want to strike out and shoot people, and they shoot innocent people. And now the federal government, or whatever you want to call it, state politicians, they're going after gun control. What would you have to say about that?
I really don't. I was worked in schools for about probably the last 10 years, and I really think that you're going to control guns is going to lessen school shootings is about the most ridiculous analogy I could ever put together. They're not related.
Right. Oh, yeah, I know.
They're not related in any way. You can take away the guns from the people that will follow the laws, and there's still the people that won't.
Well, yeah, and I've always said, number one, the preface is when guns are outlawed, only outlaws will have guns. But then the second piece was just down in Santa Barbara, this last week, a week and a half ago, where he went, crazy, and he's schizophrenic, but he had a knife that he sliced his roommates with. He had a car that he chased down two people and broke both his legs. And then when he finally got to where he was going, then he shot people. So he used a knife, a car, and a gun.
Right.
And
I think it was the Connecticut shooting. The very same week in China, there was a guy that killed, I want to say, 20 different people with a knife.
It was a box cutter thing or whatever. He just was waving his arms around.
Yeah, it did not make near the splash that the gun did. And I really think, the media just kind of runs the story. It's really not about the guns. It's about people's value systems have changed drastically.
Yeah. And
you got to protect the really high volume target areas like malls, like schools. You got to have people there to protect them because they will take advantage of it.
Exactly.
They'll go in and kill as many as they can just to make a name for themselves, to get their 5 minutes of fame.
Isn't that something? And I thought, is that really worth it? In fact, it happened up in Portland. There was a mall up there, and it's concealed carry here in Oregon. And sure enough, the guy had gone into the mall, pulled his weapon, was shooting, and somebody with a concealed weapon at that point from above pulled his weapon out and had it trained on the shooter. And the shooter turned around and saw the individual with the gun at him, and he ran. He ran out of the mall, and I think shot himself.
Yeah.
And the whole issue was, it spooked him such that, and here was you meet fire with fire, basically.
Yeah,
So-
and that I think you got to realize that the value system of our culture and basically worldwide has changed. And taking the guns away is going to make some people feel good, but it's not going to change the culture. It's not going to get rid of the people that go out and hit these target-rich environments like elementaries and malls.
Right.
Just because they can.
Because they can,
Not
yeah.
because they have guns. If it's not a gun, they'll use a machete, they'll use a knife, they'll use whatever they can use.
Yeah, exactly. Interesting.
Common sense.
well, and that's the next thing is how do we save our society and arm our people, So
Yeah.
We've got Zach Fortier on with us. He's, of course, you can go to his website, zachfortier.com, but he's written 4 true life crime books from his 30-year career in law enforcement, and it's unbelievable, ladies and gentlemen. I've got his Curb Check Reload book here. Fascinating stuff. Really is realistic. Well, it's real, but it gives you a hint of what's really going on. We're going to be right back with Zach Fortier right here on the Sunrise Show. Stay tuned for more as we continue this just riveting interview and the crime rates. We're going to be talking about crime and drugs and all the motivation on that. So stay tuned. More on the Sunrise Show when we return.
Stay tuned. Sunrise will return in a moment on KCMX News Talk 880. We want to hear from you. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, or go to kcmxam.com and go to the Talk to Us tab. Send us your thoughts. Lively conversations around news, politics, and people, plus local news and weather every 30 minutes.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome back. 33 minutes after the hour, and kind of profound. We put on a little Glenn Fry music with Zach Fortier on the phone with us this morning. He's a retired law enforcement officer, 30 years under his belt, and of course did it all. Big city stuff, K-9, SWAT, gang, domestic violence, and sex crimes, and he's written books, and you can find him, zachfortier.com, ZACH Fortier, zachfortier.com. You can also find him on Facebook at author Zach Fortier. And, of course, we posted on our Facebook page as well, the Sunrise on KCMX page. So, Zach, interesting. And your books are just fascinating because it is true life adventure as a law enforcement. And you've left out the township that you're in. So you're good there. You've protected, you've changed the names to protect the innocent. So that's good. And it's just... then you get right down to this whole factual piece. Did this help you, this reason for writing this, did this feel therapeutic, and did this help you to write this?
Yeah, it was hugely helpful in just basically getting me through the day for a while. I mean, I was, when I started this, a reporter contacted me from the city I worked in and was doing follow-up on officers that had been involved in shootings and how it affected their lives. And we got done, and he said, you should write a book based on all the stuff you've been through. It's just, wild. And so we started. He wanted to go fiction, and I wanted to go nonfiction, and we kind of parted ways there.
And that's when you kind of stuck out on your own, I guess.
Right, and that really, I didn't go down the road thinking, oh, this will help me heal, but it really did. It made a huge difference in being able to just kind of get past it.
Exactly. And I've got a few friends that are law enforcement, and you watch them very carefully because you make sure, it's almost you want to ask them, hey, you got to let us know if it's too much, because you put your service in, and this is kind of like this whole thing of tours, Vietnam or Iraq or Desert Storm or whatever. These guys keep going back, and they've got to come back and
acclimate.
Yeah, it's the when you depressure, it's the
Yep.
You got to kind of come down off everything and acclimate and kind of get back. And the things you've seen, and I talk a lot about this with World War II veterans, that when they came back, they didn't talk about what they saw, because one of the things that about America is that we have forgot that war is hell. And that we need to support and keep very close focus on what our American values are and why we do what we do. Is why aren't people voting, and why aren't people sticking together, and all of these things. But you had these great Americans that went out and fought and came back, and they just kind of brushed it under the carpet like no big deal and back around. But we lost those stories of heroism and these issues of freedom and those kind of things. And I think, that a lot of it mirrors what you're talking about.
Yeah, I did a paper in college on post-World War II and how it affected the vets, and people don't realize how they came back and they were really angry because similar to what's going on now with the VA and the lack of jobs and lack of support, it was very similar back then. There were actually riots on Washington, D.C., where veterans were marching on Washington demanding benefits and demanding, to be treated just like our vets today are saying, you're forgetting about us. We fought this. We went through this battle, and now we're done. And it's like, just go back to normal. You just can't go back to normal. It's not that easy.
Exactly. And you also have some military experience as well. Were you in
Right.
Army or?
I was in the Air Force.
Air Force. Okay. All right. So you
Right.
got in and out of the Air Force and then into law enforcement. It's interesting. I was looking at this whole VA thing, and now they've announced that they're going into criminal prosecution, and the Department of Justice and the FBI are now going to jump in. And I'm thinking to myself, does it take 100,000 Americans to get someone's attention before you get DOJ and FBI? And I was thinking, okay, wait a minute. Are there criminal prosecution on, the IRS and the Fast and Furious piece and, the wiretapping? When is that line? When is it too much where they go, okay, I guess we'll use some of our assets to investigate?
The reality is you find out, especially in law enforcement as well, it's always, the laws are always reactive and criminal investigations are always reactive, and it's what's the hot potato now. When I started, domestic violence was no big deal, and then OJ came along.
Oh my
and
gosh,
OJ changed the face of domestic violence, and it was long overdue. We were just basically taught to brush it under a rug. Whatever happened at home was family business.
Wow. Yeah.
And OJ, brought it to the forefront where, people are being beaten to death in their own homes. And it's not just women, it's men as well. It just doesn't get the attention when it's a man. I've been on several domestic violence cases where the guy was just beat. And I think one of the cases is in the book.
A father and son fighting, but if there was another one where, there was another, plenty of beatings. Best friends.
Yeah.
It was just, oh my gosh, yeah. It's just, and they just lose their minds over whether alcohol, drugs, or whatever. Speaking of drugs, Zach, related to marijuana being legalized in the nation, we've got Oregon medical marijuana cards, and I always, when I'm talking about marijuana and medical issues, I always put a disclaimer out there that for individuals that have a medical marijuana card that are feeling like they need it, we're not talking about you, we're not talking to you. We're talking about the abuse of the marijuana. And then you go to Washington and Colorado that have now recreational legal use of marijuana, and the rest of the country, it's coming. I was telling everybody.
Yeah, I think, honestly, Don, I listened to your show before I came on, and you're struggling with the morality issues, and I had to deal with that in a class I was teaching there, and, the kids are like, what do you think about this? And you got to understand, as a law enforcement officer, my job is to enforce the law. It's not to make the moral decisions.
Right.
And if this is legal, it's legal. That's it. It's not my job to say it's immoral. That's your parents' job, and that's your job for your own self. But if the legislation makes it legal, then it's legal. That's how the law works. It's not a moral issue if it's legal or illegal. That's personal.
Well, exactly. But then the next thing is, isn't that confusing to kids, though, of all ages? Is that the adults? I equate this to when President Bill Clinton was in the Oval Office and he got caught with a sexual issue and everything else, and I'm trying to explain to kids, and they're saying, well, did he do something wrong? And I'm saying, well, yes. Well, is he going to get in trouble? I'm going, they, are going to...
He got in trouble. He had an impeachment process, in effect, he lied under oath.
Right. No, you're absolutely right there, yeah.
That's very much a reality that, as a cop, when I was teaching these classes, I'd say, you don't get to decide the punishment. That's not our job. Our job is to enforce the law.
Yeah, exactly.
Not to punish. And that's a whole other system, and that's up to that system, and you can't second guess it. You either buy into it or you don't.
Exactly. So, in the issue of President Bill Clinton, he was reelected. So then
right.
That was his punishment. Okay. So you talk, about confusing the kids, and then you talk about the marijuana piece, and you say, well, kids, marijuana is bad. Marijuana is illegal. Don't do this and everything else. And then all of a sudden, states make it recreational use. Oh, yay.
Yeah.
And you're wondering, doesn't that confuse the kids related to the whole marijuana piece?
The way I described it was, we had prohibition for a while, and alcohol was illegal.
Right.
And the the problems it caused to make it illegal were so much worse than to make it legal and to regulate it.
Right. No, I'm with you there,
I really
too.
think that this is, honestly, in my opinion, this is a better choice because I know people that have been seriously harmed by smoking pot that was laced with PCP, and it forever damaged them.
Right.
And this takes that element out. And on the medical side, I've got a close friend that has got some real serious issues. He's like a genius, but he's also got Asperger's, and it causes him a lot of problems. And
Right.
he's been on a lot of medication. He's a federally basically subsidized. They pay for his housing and stuff because he's so handicapped. But they allow him to use marijuana because he was able to wean himself off 4 different really harsh medications, and all he has to do now is just smoke pot.
Exactly, and I've heard
medically, it's amazing what it's done for him. He's incredibly clear now. He was just really screwed up, and now he functions, and he's happy, and I'm glad for him. I'm glad it worked.
Right, and see, that's why I put that disclaimer in there, because I would never want to walk in someone else's shoes, and if they've got that issue going on, you want them to find that relief. You know, I mean,
it's a godsend for this guy. He's gone from being almost suicidal. He was so miserable, so now he's getting his master's degree.
Yeah, exactly. Isn't that something?
He's pulling a 4.0 grade average, and he smokes pot every day. But he's got a license for it, and it's a certain grade, and it's prescribed, and he has to check in, and he has to be evaluated, and he's doing great.
Wow,
because he's doing it.
Well,
and I'm glad for him.
And then the next thing, of course, you get there's always an angle, right? So then you get the folks that are taking advantage of it, and you know, we have this out here in Oregon where they'll grow it, but then if it finds its way onto the black market and goes east, you're now catapulted into $2,000 a pound, you know, and you get into the whole cash crop thing. So, you know, you're gonna, in fact, Jamaica is actually now looking at making marijuana legal, but you have to make it legal across the board, otherwise they'll just get to the area that isn't.
And I really think that Colorado and Washington are just test grounds legally, and I from what I've read, you know, it's very successful. They found ways to manage it well, and I think if anything, it's probably going to lessen the violence associated with marijuana and lessen the complications. It'll probably, I would think, become a positive instead of a negative.
Yeah, it's just a matter of
I'm hopeful.
Yeah, exactly right. It's the numbers. Well, Zach, you're in the middle. You've just finished the manuscript on your 5th book, related to the founder of the Crips gang, and you actually interviewed him. Is that right?
No, he actually died in 1979.
Oh, he did? Okay, that's what happened. Okay.
I interviewed his family and neighbors and Crips that were in the gang when he was a Crip and when he started it. Been to L.A., you know, driving around Compton and Watts and seeing the places he hung out and things he, you know, talked about in his letters and stuff like that. It was really interesting to find out this guy was, like, really exceptional. Like, it was really hard for me to accept how amazing he really was, because to me, he was a Crip, and I hated gangbangers.
Right.
And then to actually interview these people about his leadership and his management and what a gifted athlete he was, and, like, basically he ruled the streets by brute force. But he was also incredibly compassionate, just a weird combination, and really difficult for me to wrap my head around.
Wow. And that's going to come out in
really a fascinating guy.
Yeah. So when is that book going to come out, you think?
I'm hoping with any luck it will be out in time for Christmas, and if not, then probably February in time for Black History Month.
Yeah, right, exactly, perfect, good deal. We've got Zach Fortier on with us this morning, and, you know, finishing up, and Zach, thanks so much for your time. You can get to his website, zachfortier.com. You can also get on, of course, his books are all on Amazon, and this will be the 4 books, and I've got Curb Check Reload, and Zach, thank you so much for that. It's amazing. I mean, I knew, but, well, I shouldn't say that. I knew that what I was going to find, it was going to be unspeakable, it was going to be outlandish, it was going to, I mean, but it's riveting from the standpoint of, yeah, what makes these people tick? And like you said, it's the worst 2 hours of their life, and they've gotten into a bad situation, and, you know, drama in real life pretty much, and it's a credence to, you know, what law enforcement officers go through every day of their lives. And, you know, I say it all the time. I mean, for whenever I'm interviewing law enforcement, if you think you're hot stuff, you know, when you're going to work, put on a bulletproof vest and then let's see how hot stuff you think you are, you know?
Yeah.
So I just...
Hey, and if I could, can I give a shout out to my publicist, Sally Harrington, and my wife, Christina, for their support. They both are great support, and without them, this wouldn't be going on.
Yeah, good deal. No, to Sally and to Christina, you bet. Thank you so much. And Sally's been great, and of course, this has been super. And we'd love to have you back when this fifth book, gets out on the shelves. So good deal.
I'd love to come back. Yeah, especially to talk about this guy. He was unbelievably exceptional and a fascinating character.
Very good, very good. All right, ladies and gentlemen, Zach Fortier. Oh, well, this is excellent, Zach. I'm just glad that you're writing this. You know, maybe other law enforcement officers can learn from this, right?
Well, you hope, but some cops like the books and some don't. I don't pull any punches on. There's a lot of political crap and there's really a lot of incompetence, but the guys that are good are really good.
Right.
And then, again, I'm not real fond of the administrators either. It just seems like the incompetent people just seem to rise to the top.
Yeah. Well, and not true throughout, but you just don't ever know, I guess.
Right.
Exactly.
There was a couple of chiefs I worked for that were outstanding, and then there was a couple that, you just kind of wondered if they could even tie their shoes.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Exactly. Well, good deal. Zach, it's great having you on, and we'll talk again soon.
Okay.
All right.
Thank
Take
you.
care. All right. Zach Fortier, everybody. Author. You can find him on Facebook, author Zach Fortier. Wow. Okay, quick break. We'll be right back. More on the Sunrise Show when we return.
Stay tuned. Sunrise will return in a moment on KCMX News Talk 880.